Houdini, most elusive and incredible of escape artists, took his secrets to the grave. At least, that is what the credulous like to believe. You cannot say the same of the master preachers. Read their memoirs and they all stand up in the dock to give the same testimony. There are no pulpit secrets. Success is the ancient formula of some talent and much toil. Visit, if you will, any large theological library. Blink at the shelf upon shelf, bookcase after bookcase, the rows and rows of volumes on preaching, offering samples of sermons from the apostolic age to the atomic age. This bewilders. The how to preach manuals tend to discourage. After a while you feel you are shuffling through long stretches of sawdust. It all seems so dry and dreary. At least that was my reaction. And do you know why? I surmise I was disappointed because I did not find Ponce de Leon's Fountain of Youth. I wanted to discover and to pass on to others a new, mysterious, miraculous method of easy sermon writing. And it wasn't there. When shall we learn? Learn that in anything worthwhile, from diamond mining to dentistry, there is no quick, sure, easy way. There is no substitute for plain hard work. Thackeray is supposed to have shrugged off success by saying, "I woke up one morning and found myself famous." But some friend was so ungallant as to point out that before that blessed morn, he had been writing 8 hours a day for 15 years. One hoary old divine told a young curate, "You want to preach well? Put some sealing wax on your desk chair and stick there." In the circumstances, it would be hard to do anything else. The Germans have an earthy phrase for the stick-to-itiveness of the diligent writer. They call it Sitzfleisch, which might be freely translated as a plump rump that stays put. You could make a case for sermon writing being the hardest of all writing, because it deals with the elusive spiritual. How much easier it is to give a vivid picture of a supermarket or an automobile crash compared to describing grace or salvation or eternity or heaven. You can quote, "In my father's house are many mansions," but you cannot lay out a blueprint or an architect's picture of the condominium. You can quote about the everlasting fires of hell, but you cannot open an asbestos briefcase and exhibit even one glowing coal. You are dealing with the supernatural, and it is not easy to make this concrete and vivid. That is all the more reason why we should start off with the premise that if we want to preach a good sermon, it will always mean the sacrifice of time and usually the agony of hard mental work. But if we do not prepare the talk, the people will know it as surely as if we held up a huge sign saying, "This Boy Scout, I.S. unprepared." By the third minute, he will be eligible for admittance to the home for little wanderers. Mercifully, we rarely hear comments on such performances. I do recall reading one, though I don't remember just where. I suspect it was in the letters column of a Catholic paper. But I never can forget the sarcasm addressed to Sunday homilists in general. It was more than a sharp needle. It was a deadly harpoon. With straightforward, deadpan malice, the writer sought one small concession from the Sunday preacher. Please prepare your sermon while putting on your vestments in the sacristy, instead of during your walk from the altar to the pulpit. Sour and sardonic, of course. The milk of human kindness, curdled into tart lumps. But did he perhaps have bitter reason to write as he did? At least you can't fault the first 3 words, "Prepare your sermon." I visualize a desk and a swivel chair. Behind both, a bookcase. There is where the preparation begins. Consider first the bookcase. If the bookcase contains mostly sermon books, the chances are that the owner does not preach exceptional sermons. If, on the other hand, the shelves flash titles from history and biography and poetry, the chances are he does. Such a stable of books belongs to a broader, more adventurous mind. That some are solid spiritual volumes we take for granted. But a broad literary background provides the best equipment to produce vivid and varied and effective preaching. Which brings to mind that in a larger library, we speak of the works of Shakespeare and the works of Scott and the works of Dickens, precisely because they are the product of work. So is any first-class sermon. It may be delivered from a pulpit, but it has been fashioned at a desk. The church is only the dining room where the homiletic meal is served. The desk is the hot stove in the laborious kitchen. When a man says he does not like to preach, it often means he does not like to prepare a sermon. I doubt if the FBI and the CIA together could find a man who consistently does like the task of hammering a sermon together. Outside of lighthouse duty, writing is the loneliest job in the world. Both are solitary stints, but both, we hope, throw far a guiding beam. Many's the time, well, very often, this writer has thrown a hood over his typewriter and walked down to the nearby hospital to visit the parish sick. If they are not too ill, what a reception you get. They welcome you like a cardinal or a king. They make you feel that you have made their day. They are so grateful. And yet what have you actually done? The regular chaplain has heard the confessions and brought communion and perhaps anointed. All you do is listen and offer a little comfort, say a few words of encouragement, promise a prayer. But mostly you just listen. And yet their thank yous follow you out the door. You come away feeling that you have done something worthwhile. You have helped somebody. You are appreciated, and it is a warm, wonderful sensation. Then you go back home and sit behind that typewriter again. You stare out the window, stare down at the sheet of blank paper. Is there anything more depressing than a sheet of clean white paper? A carpenter has his hammer and nails and wood. A surgeon has his patient and his instruments. Even an undertaker has his cadaver. But the writer has nothing but a topic. Sometimes he does not even have that. His only resources are sources. And where are the good ones? Where are the fish-thrashing waters into which he can let down his net? Most of all, he complains he does not have the time. His day fills up with activities they never warned him about in the seminary, all the way from bazaars to bingo, from envelope salesmen to leaky ceilings and misbehaving furnaces. There are meetings of the parish council, CCD sessions, nursing homes, wakes, weddings, ushers, lectors, altar boys, sodalities, and on and on. With all this, is a man also expected to carve out, Sunday after Sunday, a Mount Rushmore of pulpit masterpieces? It needs, of course, no ghost come from the tomb to reveal that some men are busier than others. Who was it that said that in no other profession can you get away with doing less than in the priesthood, and in none is there more to be done if the man wants to do it? That's not the precise quotation, but that's the exact idea. A zealous priest does as much as he can, and perhaps a little more. The impossible always takes a mite longer. One very orderly clergyman had 2 desks in his study, with a swivel chair between them. One desk was for parish business, the bills and the collections, and the bulletin and the checkbook, and the rest of the sundry non-spiritual things. He could have called that desk the parish chute, because on it dropped all matters parochial. The other desk was for his weekly sermon. I don't know what he called that, but if I know human nature, the swivel chair swung around much more to the parish chute, and that desk wore out long before the other. We all share a built-in tendency to put off unpleasant things. Who sprints to the dentist? And who is eager to prepare a sermon? How many homilies have been hurriedly assembled on Saturday night? While Saturday night may be ideal for dates and dances and country club dinners, just as it used to be consecrated to the weekly bath, there is no mystic aura hanging over it to make it the perfect time for sermon composition. It was pushed into that slot only because a couple of ne'er-do-wells named laziness and lack of planning shouldered it there. Come to think of it, now that we have interpreted the Sabbath to include also the first Vespers of Sunday, with Masses being shifted to Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening, the frontiers of frenzied last-minute sermon preparation are now being pushed as far back as Saturday morning. But Saturday morning can be occupied with a funeral or a wedding or both. So, let's hear it for Friday night as the last chance saloon for the blending of the Sunday sermon. The opposite to all this, and a radiant ideal, is to begin preparing on Monday morning. I have known many priests who did this. I think of one who was formerly attached to the rectory where I am now living. The latter is a huge structure with a large but not up-to-date library. My room is close to the library door, and every Monday morning I would see this diligent padre pass by with an armful of books. I could recognize the Catholic Encyclopedia, bound volumes of the Homiletic and Pastoral Review, and generally a brace of other books not easily identifiable. During the next few days, at intervals in his busy parochial schedule, Father R. would copy copious notes on the particular topic he was researching. On Sunday evening at the Holy Hour he would deliver a 20-minute talk that held the congregation enthralled. He did not speak on gospel themes, but on some topic related to religion, like the early persecutions, or the Crusades, or religious profession, or funeral rites, or even so commonplace a subject as candles. But because he had prepared with conscientious care, and because he spoke with animation and flair, they loved it. On the other side of the coin there comes to mind the different case of another confrere. He was a missionary in South America, and one night his superior abruptly informed him he was to speak the next morning at a huge outdoor mass. The occasion corresponded to the graduation exercises at our West Point. All the dignitaries of the country, from the president down, would be there. That night he could not snare one viable thought. He said his mind was absolutely static even up to the epistle of the Mass. But during the epistle he happened to glance up at the national flag, streaming out against the fierce blue tropical sky, and all at once the 3 colors in the flag became the 3 points of his talk. He stood on the platform, he spoke, he conquered. I believe him, for he is an honorable man. I also choose to believe that behind him lay many hours of remote, unwitting preparation for just such a moment as this. I also tend to suspect that into that talk were woven swatches of previous talks, a thought gleaned from this one, and another thought adapted from that one, and all knitted together by the spirit and enthusiasm of the hour. Did not something like this happen even to St. Anthony? At a great ordination mass, the scheduled orator failed to appear. Prominent preachers were approached in the sacristy and asked to fill in. Each shook an eloquent head and held up defensive palms, so the superior of the Franciscans tapped Padre Antonio. After all, Antonio was only the chaplain of a monastery of brothers high in the backwoods hills. If he fizzled, what harm? Nobody expected anything from an unknown. He could just disappear back into his original obscurity. But surprise! When Anthony started to speak, the air suddenly turned electric. Every shoulder leaned the slightest bit forward. Every eye was riveted on the gaunt brown robe in the pulpit. He dazzled like 4th of July fireworks. He lifted them up, held them there, gently let them down. They had never heard a man speak as this man spoke. After the ceremony, everyone wanted to know where the Franciscans had been hiding him. but Pentecostal miracle it was not. Had they but known, Anthony for 10 years before had been studying the scriptures and the fathers of the church in a monastery in Portugal. This occasion only broke the dam and sent the stored-up flood of his learning and fervor rushing out. That eloquence continued to pour out over all Italy till his premature death 6 years later. Perversely, the memory rises of a tale they used to tell in clerical circles of an ambitious priest who used to attend every sacerdotal funeral with an all-purpose eulogy tucked in his cassock and a perennial hope in his heart that the preacher for the occasion would fail to appear. On one occasion he did not, and the young man was made, at least with the elderly bishop. His more sour-minded colleagues would have preferred that the manuscript had turned yellow in his scheming pocket. But, as they say in some latitudes, let us not to judge. Rather pray that we may acquire the zeal and the self-discipline to decide on Monday morning what we shall talk about on the following Sunday. Then for the rest of the week, mount that topic in our brain like a magnet so that all pertinent thoughts will leap to it. Whatever we read during the ensuing week, whomever we meet, the hospital visits we make, the letters we receive, the television shows we see, the newspaper stories we encounter, we are always alert to what they can contribute to our theme. Jot down the thoughts as they come along. These scraps will become the personal spice, sprinkled like paprika, over the more formal material lifted from more formal sources. A well-prepared Sunday sermon often begins on Monday. A warm one has something of the preacher's own mind and heart wrapped inside. A confrere of mine is willing to take a lie detector test on an incident that happened as late as last month. That particular Sunday, the preacher's homily had been so dismal that even his doting sister had her doubts. However, she hoped that others might have reacted differently. During the week, she chanced to meet a parishioner who did not know she was the curate's sister, so she ventured to ask him if by any chance he had been to the High Mass last Sunday, and what did he think of the curate's sermon. He looked her right in the eye and said, "I sent the poor man a get-well card." One of the world's premier pianists once acidly said, "If I neglect practicing for one day, I know it. If I miss a few days, my friends can tell. If I skip 2 weeks, even the critics recognize it. When it comes to preaching, the dullest brain in the pews is sharp in one area. He can tell after a half-dozen sentences if the man in the pulpit has prepared or not. If we do not prepare, we rant, we repeat, we hesitate, we wander. We beat the dead horse of the obvious. We just shout louder something that everyone has heard before, as if we were a spiritual Columbus discovering a brilliant new truth. But we deceive no one, and we waste God's precious time.